Well, good afternoon, you handsome lot, and today we've got a 2015 1 litre Ecoboost. Yes, it is a Wetbelt, but I'm going to be answering all the questions that I get asked frequently regarding the job themselves and what problems people are running up into, and also the tooling, which is a 1 to 5 torque multiplier and the Laser Tools 6952 timing set. Now, the reason behind this video and the reason why I'm doing it is because I'm getting so many emails about the car's not starting after they've done a timing belt, and what is the timing procedures for the little Fiesta Ecoboosts. So I'm going to show you exactly in this video how I time these engines up, and it works perfect for me every single time. Now, I've already gone down the road of removing the rocker cover, the sump, the exhaust, all the usual palaver. We're going to get round now to the first thing, and that is setting the camshafts up. And you're going to be needing these camshaft lobe tools and also a 21mm which goes on your crankshaft pulley. Once you've got your ratchet on the crankshaft pulley now, we can turn the engine over clockwise until we get them 2 camshaft lobes on cylinder 3 pointing roughly about 2 o'clock, just off the compression stroke, and it's normally about there. You can grab our tool now, and there is an inlet and an exhaust. We need to the inlet one first, and we're going to get that sat on there. Oh, look at that, first time. And that should sit nice and snug on the cylinder head and the camshaft lobe itself. Now, the camshaft locking tools, they go on cylinder 2 on the exhaust and cylinder 3 on the inlet, and make sure that once you've fitted them, you get your Allen key and make sure that they are nice and tight. You do not want them so they're wobbling around. Now, once them cams are locked up, what I do for my own preference is mark the back of the camshaft pulley and the camshaft carrier cap on the inlet and exhaust, so you know that when you've done the job that everything is going back in the correct place. Now I've got the vehicle up in the air, we're going to concentrate on locking the crankshaft. Now, you've probably noticed this nice new Pickler engine support bar which goes underneath the vehicle, mounts to the floor pan and also the subframe with a little hook. The reason for that is because I was struggling when you take the dry shaft mount off to put the torque multiplier on. I was having to take this on and off, and it was a pain, and it was adding probably another 20 minutes to the job. So I've set this up now, and once that's fitted, you haven't got to worry about supporting the engine whatsoever. So we're going to go around the back here, and there is a little, hang on, let me get a little torch. Now, behind the dry shaft, right by here, there is a little 10mm bung that we need to take out. Once that's removed, we can go back to the timing pin. Oh, we can get this timing pin now, which goes in. Now screw it in, make sure that it is nice and tight up to the block, like that. Now, with that pin in, as you can see there, it is going to lock on the crankshaft itself. So get your 21mm again on the crank pulley and give it a turn, and that should lock up nice and tight. Now, to do these, you do need to remove the starter motor to put the flywheel locking tool in, and what I'm going to be using is a very long extension with a wobbly end, and I go up through the passenger wheel arch and I can get that top bolt on that starter motor, because it can be a little bit fiddly. Now, with the starter motor fully out of the way, we can go ahead now and put the flywheel locking tool in. Now, as you can see, it's 2 bolts and it locks into the ring gear itself. Now we can go ahead and get the torque multiplier connected. Now, go ahead and remove your dry shaft mount, which I've struggled before now, putting it on and off, on and off, on and off with the jack. But this has been an absolute game changer. Now, put the mounting bracket for the torque multiplier on the back of the engine, like so. Now, before you go ahead and put the torque multiplier onto the mounting bracket, get your timing pin and make sure if you've done everything right up to now, that there is a little hole in the crankshaft pulley that lines up with the timing cover, and that should just slot in perfect. Should we go ahead now and grab the multiplier itself? Once you've now got that torque multiplier bolted up to the engine, please make sure that everything's tight. I know I keep stressing it because if it's not tight, the chances are it might slip, and you do not want that happening. Now, what I like to do for a little bit of my own preference is mark the crank pulley to the block itself, and also the flywheel to the bell housing, so we can see if anything's twisting or jumping. Then we can go ahead now, get that torque multiplier, 1/2 inch ratchet, and crack that bolt off. Now, you can go and get a great big breaker bar, but you're making work hard for yourself. Now, if you've got the multiplier, just make the job easier. Now, once you've removed that crankshaft bolt and the torque multiplier, remove the crankshaft pulley, and the reason why you need to time it is because it's got a pickup ring for the crankshaft sensor, and if that isn't timed, your engine will never ever ever start. So be careful, you do not damage that. Always put them upside down so the magnetic strip is at the top. As you can see now, I have removed the timing cover and the timing belt. Now, if you don't know about this already, there is a little filter just by there with a 6mm grub screw. You remove that, and then that filter just pulls out. Make sure that that's nice and clean, then you can just put it back in. Now, these are all the items that you need to put this vehicle back together. One friction washer, I'll show you where that goes shortly. New crank bolt, rocker cover, crankshaft oil seal, and a little sealing ring between the timing cover and the engine itself. And last but not least, a genuine oil filter. Now, regarding the timing belts themselves, it is a choice of two, whether it's a 16mm and an 18mm. So I'll flip it right now and show you. And there's a choice, and it is a difference between the colours. The red one is the 18mm, and the blue one is a 16mm. You've got to make sure that it's the right one for your vehicle. So all you have to do is just measure the old timing belt. Let's move around now to the crankshaft oil seal. Now, just plonk it in with your fingers. Just push it in ever so slightly until it grabs, and then we can go back around to the laser tool timing kit, and that has got the crankshaft oil seal tool, and tap that in and you'll hear it almost like a metal on metal, and you'll know that it's fully home. Now, with that crankshaft oil seal in, we now need to move around to the friction washer. This is a must. They do not come from factory, but when you're putting them back together, you do have to put that friction washer in. And what it does, it stops the pulley from turning when you're torquing it up to spec, and make sure that it is nice and clean. Everything's spotless as you're putting it back together. Now, please remember, this isn't the full job doing it. This is strictly just the timing procedures and how I do it, and all the common questions that I get asked all the time. So I thought, at least if I do a full video, I can show people and relate to it rather than explain and write messages. This is going to help me, and it's going to help you in the end, because I can sit for hours at night time just, yeah, do this, do this, do this, do this. But at least if I do a specific video just for the time inside, not the full job, it's going to help so many people. Now let's go back around now to the most important part and getting this crank pulley back on. Now, remember the green little mark that I put on? This is going to help you no end. We just get that pulley on now, slide it in, be careful that you don't damage crankshaft oil seal. Now, if you can get your little mark lined up perfectly, get your timing pin, and that should slide in perfectly. Now, you'll know when it's home because it'll make like a metally noise when it's inserted, a little bit like that. It's hard to do it one-handed, but yeah, do not forget to time that crank pulley up. Now to one of the questions that I get asked all the time is, what is a torque sequence for the crank bolt? We'll put your brand new bolt in, and you need to go 25 newton meters on your first stage, and then 70 newton meters, and then we can apply the torque multiplier. Now, after you've done your first two stages, what you need to do, get your timing pin, remove it, and put it back in, and make sure That's the noise that I was telling you about. Make sure it slides in absolutely perfect. Now what you can do, you can either leave that out, but what I choose to do is leave it in. I've now gone ahead and connected the torque multiplier up to the engine. Now what we need to do, get your torque wrench and do 60 newton meters. Perfect, on the torque multiplier, and then remove your torque wrench and then just get a normal 1/2 inch extension or ratchet and then do 5 90 degrees. Now just to make things a little bit easier for myself, what I've done, because I'm doing these all the time, I do put a little bit of paint on the middle bit of the torque multiplier to the housing, so you know that when you've done a full 360 degrees, then you can go a further 90 degrees to the colours. 9 times out of 10, all these colours match up all the same. Now if you've done everything right, that pin should just pull out perfectly, and all your lines on the pulley and also there will line up perfectly. Right, well after a couple hours or so, we have now got this vehicle fully back together. Now one thing I do like to mention about these is them little rubber O-rings on the top of the injectors. As you pull them off, they can break, they can tear, so just keep an eye out for them, because if they are torn, you need to replace them, otherwise you're going to get petrol everywhere. But before you put that fuel rail back on, just put a little bit of lubrication so the rail itself slides on. Perfect. Now move around to the end of the camshaft and you've got the vacuum pump. Make sure that you're removing with 3/8. It takes about 2 minutes to do, if that. And on the bottom of it, there's a little filter. Make sure that that is nice and clean, because that is going to affect you whether you get a boost problem or a hard pedal. If that's blocked, it's going to cause you all sorts of problems. Make sure it's nice and clean. Now probably last but not least, this is probably my favourite question that I get asked all the time, probably every other day, is hi Baz, I've done a wet belt and I'm getting a fuel pressure fault. What do you think it could be? Well, I'm going to show you now. The plug for the high pressure fuel pump will also fit the evap valve, and it is quite easy to get them mixed up. But that now is the right way. The smaller plug goes to the evap valve and the bigger one to the high pressure fuel pump. That has got to be probably one of my most common questions that I get asked. Now providing you have done everything correctly, we have got the coolant level which is up to the max. We've put fresh engine oil in it. Now I have disconnected the coil packs to wind them over to let the oil pressure and the fuel pressure build up, connected them back up. I'm going to jump in the car now for the first startup. Now don't forget to protect the customer's cars with the seat cover, steering wheel protector and also a nice floor mat. And this car has covered 59,000 miles, providing, like I said just previously, if you've done everything correct, now that this car will start, and it should just run lumpy for a couple of seconds and then it'll level itself out nice and perfectly. There we go. Engine oil light has gone straight out and it's ticking over beautifully. And there you have it. That is one video on on all the most common questions that I get asked about, and that is a little bit of an instructional video. Now one thing that I do like to do when the vehicle's ticking over and getting up to temperature is monitor a little bit of live data. Now what I like to measure is the engine coolant temperature, the engine RPM, the long term and the short term fuel trims. And the reason behind this, let me see if I can show you. If you've got, say, any air leaks or the rocker cover gasket's leaking or one thing or another, if we go around to, let me put it in a bigger graph for you. If we just replicate an air leak by pulling a dipstick out, you'll see the short-term fuel trim jumping up. So we need to keep that below 10, preferably about 4 to 6. It's perfectly normal for one of these, and that is bang on. And this leads me now to the worst part of doing any big job, and that's putting all my tools away. But while I'm putting my tools away, I'm going to be watching the live data and making sure that that car is running nice and healthily. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed that video and it answers some of the questions that I get asked on a daily or every other day about these wet belts, because more and more people now are starting to do them and they're coming into tiny little problems, and I hope this video, well, it should help you out. So anyway, let's get it sent.